You spend your entire life giving back to society all over the world. You and your wife retire to New Hampshire, one of the safest places in the country. You both go for a walk one day to enjoy nature along a popular hiking trail and wind up face to face with evil. My name is M. William Phelps. I'm an investigative journalist and the true crime author of dozens of true crime books. I've dedicated the past 25 years of my life to helping families of the missing and murdered. Join me. We're crossing the line. Stephen Reid had traveled the world. Born in Concord, New Hampshire, Stephen came of age during what was a difficult time in the country, the Vietnam War era, a polarizing moment in our brief history. Post-college, as the 70s gave way to the 80s, Stephen is just 24 years old when he joins the Peace Corps and begins teaching middle school English to students in Maraua, Niger. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. This sort of selfless work gave Stephen a sense of doing what he could in the world to make it a better place. It fits so perfectly into his soft, kind, caring character. Stephen holds a bachelor's degree in English from Notre Dame. So, living the core tenet of the Peace Corps, helping those countries that need it most, you could say Stephen is simply following his path in life, doing what he is supposed to be doing. When he returns to the States in 1981, after several years in Africa, Stephen winds up in Washington, D.C., taking on a position at the Peace Corps headquarters in the role of, say, an ambassador, if you will, to West Africa. He had made a decision long ago that he would try to make a difference in the world. And here he is, fulfilling that dream. Stephen cut a sort of preppy figure. Short-cropped, brownish-black hair, a perfectly trimmed goatee, skinny frame, and a calm and friendly disposition. He wore alligator t-shirts and khaki pants and spoke with a measured sense of self-assurance. Nobody in Stephen's circle would ever describe the guy as anything other than one of the gentlest men they had ever met. In D.C. not a few months, Stephen runs into Wendy Pasgo. Her friends call her Wendy. The eldest daughter in a family of 9 kids, Wendy grew up in Togo, West Africa. She is an exceptional basketball player and part of the Togolese national basketball team, competing and traveling all over the world. She spoke Moor, that's M-O-O-R-E, the language she grew up with, but also English and French. Noting that they both shared similar interests and both had experience in West Africa, quite simply put, seeing the world in the same way, a mutual friend thought Stephen and Wendy should meet. They seemed to be the perfect match. Soon as Stephen lays eyes on Wendy, he knows the reason why he has come to Washington, D.C. to work. Out of all the places he could have wound up after being in West Africa, here he is, meeting the girl of his dreams, essentially, who is basically from the same area where he had spent so much of his adult life already. Needless to say, the two of them hit it off immediately and begin talking about things only the two of them could. Stephen is an avid tennis player and keeps a rather strict physical fitness schedule. So he and Wendy begin playing tennis and working out together, spending all the free time they have doing things around Washington. I'm always envious when I research stories and hear this kind of romance develop. The 70s and 80s are full of this type of relationship developing. No dating apps, no preconceived judgments, and reams of advice from talking heads and psychiatrists telling you who you are best suited for. No barrage of psychological advice from social media therapists telling you the do's and don'ts and how you need to act. And no damn checklists of criteria your partner needs to meet before you allow the universe to work its magic. Just an old-fashioned introduction by a mutual friend, and love seems to do the rest. Stephen ends up with a job that takes him back to West Africa. It's 1983, heading into 1984 now, and they have been together over a year, with the discussion of marriage on the table. Wendy decides to put her studies aside for now, being the selfless and generous spirit she is, and travel to West Africa with Stephen. The following year, in West Africa, they get married. 2 years later, they head back to the States, and Wendy gives birth to their first child. 4 years later, in 1990, they have another child. By then, Stephen had left the Peace Corps and returned to school at Syracuse University in upstate New York. From that time, with their lives together just beginning, until 2019, Stephen and Wendy and the kids travel the world together, winding up in Haiti when that devastating, catastrophic earthquake hit in 2010. By 2019, Stephen and Wendy are happily ever after settled in Concord, retiring after 30-something years of giving back to the world. They had lived their lives under a code of helping others, seeing that others had opportunities and choices. They had changed so many lives, too numerous to even calculate. They had made a difference. Two wonderful people making the world a better place. And I don't say that loosely, as if using a cliche, like they lit up the room when they walked in. I mean this literally. The Reids made the lives of those they touched easier just by giving of themselves. And now here they are, back where Stephen had been born, to live out the rest of their lives together, as their children now had lives and families of their own. They could spend their time hiking and boating and sharing new experiences with family and friends. Stephen, of course, played tennis and had a weekly game he never, ever missed. So, when he fails to show up on Wednesday, April 20th, 2022, his opponent, a friend, and others begin to wonder where he is. No call? No word from him about not showing up? Perhaps he suddenly became ill. Throughout that same day, family cannot get a hold of Stephen or Wendy, who hasn't been heard from either. Their son and daughter begin to worry. It is totally out of character for them not to stay in touch and bounce out of life without telling anyone. So the family gets the property manager of the apartment complex where they live to let them in so they can take a look around and see what is going on. Nothing seems off inside the apartment. It feels as if they were living their life, but were also maybe just plucked from it. The one description almost everyone who knew Stephen and Wendy would agree with is that they were, number one, soulmates, and number two, spent every moment they could together. They had been married over 30 years. They had settled into retirement well and were living their best lives. Inside their apartment, their son notices that the beds are made and both of their phones are there. Stephen's wallet is also on the counter, and both of their cars are parked outside. With all of that, the family decides to get the Concord police involved. Something isn't sitting right. Something is off. There is just this feeling inside that apartment that the Reids will not be coming back. Concord police begin inside the apartment and agree that the Reids were there one minute and gone the next. Why would anyone leave their home in this day and age without their phone? Sad as it is, it's such an integral part of daily life now, we hardly even think about taking it with us. It's like keys, jacket, phone. There are woods in the back of the apartment complex, and police gather and begin to search the area. Maybe they went for a walk and got hurt. Happens more than most of us realize. You slip, you fall, and you need help. As police are walking through the woods, they come across a young guy, maybe in his 20s, out there as well. He seems to be camping. He has this homeless, but not homeless vibe about him. You see this type of person in northern New England. Backpackers, serious hikers, out in the wilderness for weeks at a time. Arthur, he says when police approach him and ask him his name. Arthur Kelly. He says he's just out there enjoying nature. Besides a few camping supplies and a tent, they notice that he has 4 cans of Mountain Dew Code Red with him. But that is about all. Dude is looking to stay very caffeinated, one might guess. Not giving them much information that helps the search, they move on from Arthur Kelly and continue combing through the woods to see if there is any sign the Reids simply went out for a walk or hike and decided not to tell anyone. About half a mile from the Reids' apartment is an area called the Broken Ground Trail System, which is along the Marsh Loop Trail. Both of these trails kind of connect. It's a popular spot for mountain biking, running, and of course hiking. Nature rules out here. There's a pond and marsh with plenty of wildlife of all types. As the search for Stephen and Wendy moves down into both trails the following day, April 21st, as worry and concern for the couple now mounts, family knows without a doubt they would never take off for what is almost a day and a half without contacting and letting someone know. As police are searching, they come across 2 bodies, which appear to be Stephen and Wendy Reid. Sad and tragic, obviously, but what is strange to police, at least in this early stage, becomes that it appears as though both had been shot to death, like gunned down. Out here in the middle of the woods, down a slope, 2 locals killed as if they had been hunted. Police search for a weapon, but have no luck. Both bodies have multiple gunshots, so any idea of a murder-suicide, which as an investigator you'd have to consider, is scratched immediately. The Reids were murdered, here in Concord, along a popular trail where scores of people are generally enjoying nature. 2 people with absolutely no enemies whatsoever in the world. 2 people who had given of themselves to the world in ways which could never be measured, changing so many lives, gunned down not a half mile away from their home. None of it makes any sense. Investigators begin to think back to the previous day when they first started searching, and something clicks. Arthur Kelly, that hipster camper. Something seemed off with the guy. And his presence there in the woods, seemingly camping, but more or less as if living out there, as April in Concord, New Hampshire can be considered winter by all means, it all had this funny feeling to it. So Concord investigators go into the database and begin searching for Arthur Kelly to get a read on if he has a rap sheet or not, if he's a troublemaker, or has been arrested for any reason. And the first red flag becomes that they cannot find an Arthur Kelly in the system, or one fitting his description living in the area. It's very likely Arthur Kelly is a fake name. Let's take our first break, come back, and get into the investigation. You are listening to Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps. I'll be right back shortly. I'm not sure why the universe works in the way it does sometimes, honestly, or if the universe actually has anything to do with the way in which an imbalance seems to sometimes filter through humanity. Why is it that two people who have given their lives, essentially, over to helping the world become a better place and do nothing more than spread love and kindness, meet up with a tragic end like this when all they are doing is enjoying their lives together? It's that why question in murder we are always striving to answer here on Crossing the Line. Why Stephen and Wendy Reid? With Stephen and Wendy Reid's deaths officially ruled homicides and no sign of a young guy named Arthur Kelly anywhere, Concord police go back to where they met up with Mr. Kelly in the woods and find that his campsite has been abandoned. They come up with a brilliant investigative idea. That Mountain Dew Code Red someone mentions, the one he was drinking, and the 3 other cans he had. What if we do a canvass of nearby Walmart surveillance cameras and Code Red purchases and see what we can come up with? They do just that, and within a few hours, they have someone on camera, Arthur Kelly's size, buying Code Red Mountain Dew at the Walmart closest to where he was camping. They zoom in on his face, and he's wearing a mask. So it cannot be determined factually that this male is the same guy they came upon in the woods. But they know it is. They then begin to chase other leads while keeping the guy they are now calling Mountain Dew Man at the forefront. They need to talk to him, but they also need to chase down any other potential scenario that could have taken place. With not much to go on, Concord police put out a media alert asking anyone with information to step forward. One witness explains that she definitely saw Stephen and Wendy along the trail that day, and they were walking so fast, this witness says, she stepped out of their way to allow them to pass by her. So this puts them out there on the trail on that day, which is important, because it appears they were out there on their own, enjoying a hike. It doesn't appear as though someone might have followed them home and took them out into the woods at gunpoint. But there's more, the witness says. After they passed by, the Reids entered into a heavily wooded section of the trail, and she lost sight of them. But within 5 to 10 minutes after they passed her, she heard 5 consecutive gunshots. They ask her to describe the sound. A handgun, she says, not a shotgun. And she is very sure about this because, well, this is New Hampshire. And whether you own them or not, you get to know the different sounds of guns. The dogs and I were startled, and I wasn't sure whether I should go down that trail, but I ultimately did, she explains. Did you see anything? They ask her. I saw a young man standing on the trail looking into the woods, and he stood there looking at me and then back into the woods. As she walked toward the guy, he began walking toward her, and he passed her by without saying anything. I turned at one point to look back at him, and he was staring at me. I turned back around and started walking and never saw him again. Can you imagine this? You are explaining this information to the police, knowing now you had just brushed shoulders with someone who had likely just killed 2 people. You count your blessings after that, I reckon. She describes him. White, late 20s, early 30s, 5 feet 10 inches tall, slender, short brown hair, clean shaven, and he appeared to be homeless or living on the street. He was dressed casually in a dark blue jacket or hoodie, khakis. He had a black backpack. He was also carrying a brown plastic bag, and she believed it to be from Market Basket, a popular supermarket chain in New England. which was full of stuff, and she says the bag looked heavy. They take her phone and check out the coordinates from the time she crossed paths with the guy, and it is the exact location where the Reids' bodies were found. They are even able to pinpoint the time she allowed the Reids to pass her on the trail, 2:50 p.m., with the shots being fired at 2:54 p.m. She made it down into the trail where the bodies were later found by 2:59 p.m. So they now know for certain the Reids were murdered between 2:54 and 2:59 p.m. Weeks go by and they cannot find Mountain Dew Man. They also do not develop any other promising leads. By May 17th, the FBI gets involved and they release a sketch based on that witness's statement. She had recalled the guy specifically. After the sketch is released, dozens of calls come in with people claiming to have seen or even know Mountain Dew Man. That's who this is. They know this. None of it results in locating him, however. They go back to the crime scene again to see if they missed anything. It's May 20th. Scouring over the ground, inch by inch. About 5 feet from where the bodies were discovered, they find several shell casings from a Sig Luger 9mm handgun, matching the bullets taken from the Reids' bodies. Later forensic testing concludes the same. As they begin talking to people in the area around the trail and where the Reids lived, several neighbors and hikers frequenting the area begin describing someone they considered to be homeless hanging around from November 2021 into April 2022. The guy walked around carrying grocery bags and, strangely, Amazon delivery boxes. They call him homeless, but also say he appeared clean-shaven, neat, and also not too damn friendly, and in many instances, flat out rude and angry. Only after the murders did they stop seeing him come around anymore. Then someone comes forward and explains they know of a burnt tent site out in the woods where they believe the guy lived for a time. They had even brought a cop out there once to check it out, back before the murders. This was on April 15th. Out there, they find all sorts of burned Mountain Dew cans. And get this, 155 small propane tanks. There are various shopping bags, a pair of socks, t-shirt, and several euro coins, of all things. They bag and tag jars, mugs, glass droppers, and some silverware. So Mountain Dew Man was living out there. Looking at some of the stuff, it's also a good bet the guy was smoking dope, either crack or heroin, maybe both. Persistence, I should say, solves these types of cases. You've got a guy, and you have this feeling he's your guy. So you have to follow your instinct and the evidence and get to him and exclude or include him in your investigation. For all they know, he could have witnessed the murders and not committed them. Maybe he was just there at the same time as the witness who saw him along the trail after seeing the Reids. There is no evidence he committed the murders, only that he had the opportunity. In July, one of the detectives is going through some surveillance footage from Shaw's Supermarket, another local chain. He spots Mountain Dew Man buying groceries. He's wearing a blue bandana covering the lower half of his face, but it's definitely him. They know this for certain. They also obtain surveillance footage from outside of Shaw's and see Mountain Dew Man heading down a path nearby that connects to the Marsh Loop Trail. I'd describe it as kind of like a cut-through people use. Two of those people who use this cut-through were Wendy and Stephen Reid because it also connects to their apartment complex and the woods behind it. So now you've put the suspect in the same place that the Reids often were. You've connected him to the crime scene via another witness. Beyond that, within the debris they find at the burnt tent site are Sig Luger spent shell casings matching those used to murder the Reids. So now it's all coming together. Mountain Dew Man is your killer. But who the heck is he? Turns out this Walmart near the scene where they had originally spotted Mountain Dew Man in that mask comes up with several purchase receipts from the guy. And lucky for them, he used a series of credit cards. That's big. Unless he stole them, they can now obtain warrants and have the bank turn over all the information they have on the owner of those credit cards. Sure, he could have stolen them, but chances are they're his. It takes weeks and weeks, of course, but they soon come up with a name from several supplement purchases the man who owns the credit cards had made. Those purchases, incidentally, are connected to an email address with Kelly in it. Now they have a connection to Arthur Kelly. You see, criminals might use fake names and other seemingly stealthy means to hide, but they rarely deviate from those fake names and change them routinely. So they pick a fake name, in other words, and they run with it, which is kind of stupid, right? After running the names through the system, they come up with several booking photos and arrests for burglary and other crimes. And the booking photo is a dead-on match to Mountain Dew Man. Further, the initial cop in the woods who actually spoke to Mountain Dew Man takes one look at the booking photo and says, "That's him." No doubt about it. One of his arrests consisted of getting caught trying to steal from a Walmart in Utah. When they caught him and searched his body, they found a handgun, which had been reported stolen in the same town where he was staying 2 weeks before. A few weeks later, closer to the time he arrives in New Hampshire, he is pinched again after shoplifting from a store, and they find a 9mm Luger on him. Again, a weapon like the one used to kill the Reids, which had been reported stolen. For all of this and many more burglaries and shoplifting charges, he is given, you guessed it, probation. Supervised, though. Yeah, that'll make a difference. Supervised probation. Of course, he fails to report for probation, and an arrest warrant is issued in the fall of 2022 as he is heading toward New England on the run and in the direct path of Stephen and Wendy Reid. Here's another repeat offender known to be carrying firearms he had stolen, given a slap on the wrist, let go, and out into the world to wreak havoc on society. All because judges and courts gave him a second and third and fourth chance. It's appalling. Had they put him in jail to begin with for possession of stolen firearms and shoplifting, we wouldn't be here talking about the murders of Wendy and Stephen Reid. Concord police now have his real name, Logan Clegg. And they discover a Logan Clegg had been working at a McDonald's in Concord, New Hampshire. Yet he is long gone by the time they have all of this information. In talking and working with police in Utah, Concord investigators receive information that on October 11th, 2022, Logan Clegg is scheduled on a flight from JFK International Airport in New York to Berlin, Germany. He's booked a ticket. The flight is scheduled for October 14th. He's looking to get the hell out of the country. Let's take our final break, come back, and conclude this episode of Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps. Thank you for listening. I'm very grateful. Be back in 1 minute. When you are running, there is no question you will have to stop at some point, obviously. You cannot beat the system in place of tracking criminals. From computers, investigators can find people anywhere in the world if they have certain information about that person. With Clegg, the scum who killed the Reids, he cannot hide. He can duck out in the woods for a time, but sooner or later, like a rat behind a stove, he will have to come out. Because they have Clegg's phone number and personal data, they can begin to literally watch his movements in real time as his phone pings off cell towers. But he is not near JFK in New York, where he is scheduled to fly out of the country. That's not where they find him. That was the ruse. Instead, they track him way up north in Vermont near Burlington, at a Price Chopper, yet another New England food supermarket chain. The guy loves his chain supermarkets. I'll say that. As they watch the pings in that area on a map as he begins walking down the road, his cell phone again pinging off cell towers, it gives investigators his exact location in real time. There are 2 detectives now circling the Price Chopper. Clegg is walking nearby. They have eyes on him. Soon, officers from the South Burlington PD arrive, as well as Vermont State Police. And they now all have eyes on Mr. Mountain Dew Man. They follow him to the South Burlington Public Library and take him into custody without any trouble whatsoever. He is arrested for violating his parole conditions in Utah. And when he goes to court in Vermont the next day, he is ordered held without bail for that probation violation. I could rage here, obviously, as they are now reacting to him rather than responding to his earlier crimes. But I'll leave it there. By October 19th, he is rearrested, this time on 2 counts of second-degree murder under a warrant from New Hampshire. He waives extradition and is soon transported to New Hampshire. He pleads not guilty on October 26, 2022. It takes a year of court filings and arguments over evidence, but by the end of October 2023, Clegg is found guilty on all counts. And let's just hear some of what the prosecutor had to say about him.
Might have been successful. He had various email accounts, fake names, the fake passport, and a one-way ticket out of the country. It was an elaborate cover-up scheme, one that Your Honor should view as a cold and calculated and conscious effort to try to get away with brutally murdering 2 people. The state made multiple arguments in our sentencing memorandum in support of the recommendations that we've put forth today. What I'll highlight is that the state flags that there are numerous, significant, aggravating factors in this case that Your Honor should consider in sentencing Logan Clegg, and nothing that we can identify that would be mitigating. If there were a case to send a message to the community, it's this one. The state is recommending, Your Honor, that you sentence Logan Clegg to 2 consecutive 50-year sentences. Now, there are many family members here present, either in the courtroom or by WebEx. Many of them, as Your Honor will recall, were present during the entire
He is sentenced to 50 years to life, whatever the hell that is supposed to mean. Being New Hampshire, I'll assume it means in 25 years he will face a parole board and begin the process of explaining how much of a model prisoner he has been and how he should be rewarded for that behavior. But then again, my hope is that he never ever sees the light of day as a free man, because he will kill again. That is what this man does. He gives nothing, and then he violates you in the most violent ways imaginable, all because why? He feels like it. Clegg grew up in Washington State and had killed a man there in 2018. It was determined that he had acted in self-defense, so they let him off. But when they went to go look for Clegg to tell him he would not be charged, they couldn't find him. He had already booked town, which tells you everything you need to know about that so-called self-defense murder. The Reid son spoke after the verdict in New Hampshire, calling Clegg what he is, a thief, liar, and murderer. The son added that his parents' legacy is that of humanitarians with enduring kindness. Finally, the son said, which is so very true, that Mr. Clegg would have kept on killing had he not been stopped by what was, in my opinion, a dogged investigation by brilliant detectives all around. They worked this case, chopped away at small, different leads until they came to their guy. Clegg never gave a motive. He didn't rob the Reids. They were there. He shot and murdered them for no apparent reason other than he felt like it. That's it for this week. Be safe. Be aware. Head over to patreon.com/MWilliamPhelps and sign up for my free content page, where I'll be interacting with you, doing live streams, posting exclusive content, and dropping a major limited series podcast exclusively for Patreon members. That's patreon.com/MWilliamPhelps. patreon.com/MWilliamPhelps. Sources for this episode include New Hampshire Public Radio interview, Peace Corps website story by Stephen Boyd Somm, State of Vermont versus Logan Clegg, complaint and petition for interstate rendition of fugitive affidavit. Boy, that was a lot. Crossing the Line is executive produced by M. William Phelps, LLC, and Matthew Valentinus, Mom's Basement Management. Written by me, M. William Phelps. Audio mastering and mixing by Matt Russell. Music by Epidemic Sound. Original music written and performed by Thomas Mooney, Tom Phelps, and Matt Russell.